I'm Shawn Bland at the Art Center of Wilmington Island. We are so glad to offer a way to stay connected and continue creating art. Check out our new list of art at home kits for both kids and adults, available for curbside pickup or mail order. Keep visiting our Facebook page and website to see the latest options. We will post them as quickly as we can make them. Each kit contains everything you need to complete a beautiful painting at home. Now that you have your supplies, it's time to watch a step-by-step tutorial. Time to paint. The painting that we're going to do of the goldfish today is going to be an interesting 3-canvas project. We're going to actually begin by doing a wash on the background. This will, one thing, give movement in the background to go along with the movement you see in the school of fish. But to begin with, I'm going to let you use your sponge brush and just dip it in your water, and then go over and put it on your palette and begin adding white to it. And once you have enough white on there mixed up with the water, so paint and water mixed up, then I just want you to come in and lightly put a coat of it right across your canvas. And you can see you don't need much, and it's not going to cover up your picture, your drawing, because we did that in the paint markers so they won't disappear. But it'll give a feeling of the background being behind the fish, and that's what we're looking for. So a little water, a little white paint, and then you're just gonna skim right across the top. And just get a feeling of a nice background being covered in, okay? So that'll take care of one of them. Now we'll continue. Just a little water, a little white paint on your sponge brush. Just blend it, mix it, blend it, and then come over on this one. You'll just start right across the top, and you can see how you can just blend. You don't need much. We just want a little bit of a wash back there before we put our fish in. All of this is going to be painted in. But that little overlook of white will be nice. You'll have to dip in the water and dip in the paint each time you give out. Just reload. Okay, so now we have 2 done, so I'll go on and finish the 3rd one. I'll have to bring that over so I can reach it, but I'll do the same thing. So now we have all that space covered. And as I paint on these, I'll be moving them around a little bit so you can get a really good view of what needs to be done to make your fish. I'm going to rinse out the sponge brush and dry it off and put it aside. And we'll talk about the fish colors a little bit. To start with, we're going to identify the different colors of fish that we have drawn. We have colors in the grayish family and in the bluish family, and then we have those in the black family. Now, that doesn't mean that we're going to put just black or just blue or just a gray. We're going to try to mix up as many different values of gray as we can to make this painting very interesting. I'd like for you to actually on this one start with the black so that you can identify those fish first. So if you'll just dip your round brush in the water and then go over and get the black paint. This is going to be the first color that's going to help us find the fish, and that's what we want to do is we want to be able to separate them into different colors. Now you'll see many different ways that you can hold your brush and use this round brush to make this painting successful. To begin with, I am just using the tip of the round brush to identify the shape of the fish. So that's what I did first. Then I'm gonna continue that same thing throughout this panel. And after I get all the black fish identified and have that base color put in, then I'm gonna come back and add different values to that fish. So each one of these will be just painted first in a basic black color. Now you know that each time you go over and load your brush with black, it changes. So each time I come and put more paint on my brush, I may need to pick up water and add to it. And the amount of water that I put changes how black it looks or how gray it looks. The more paint you have, of course, the blacker it is. If you add more water, then it's going to get grayer. And it doesn't matter which one you do. It's really good if you do all of them. So as I begin to pull this black through the fish's shape, you can see that it identifies this school of black that's traveling right through the center, and it adds a lot of interest to the painting. So that's what we're going to focus in on first, is just doing pretty much a location of the fish in the sense of just a mapping where we go in and identify which fish that we're actually gonna paint which color. Then we'll add detail on those fish as needed to create interest in the painting. But right now I'm just using the tip of my brush to go through and find the edge of the fish. And then when I find the edge, you can see how many different ways that I have to use my wrist to bend it around to create the edge that I want. And that's what we're looking for with this round brush. Now, these are just lines that you've been given to show you where the fish are, and as you go and find the edge, you can see that it's going to easily, very simply, it's going to create the movement that the painting needs, because the wave of color is going that direction. So as you can see, I'm using the toe of the brush to get a little tiny point. As the fish gets larger in the middle, I'm pressing down a little bit more and filling up the space. We're not really identifying much else except the location at this point of where the fish is. Now, when you get two fish that are side by side and they're both dark, like one's in the front and one's overlapping in the back, if you will change and add a blue to it, then you'll get a bluish black that will be different than the black. And if you do that, you can tell the difference between the two fish. So in this particular one, I'm adding blue and black, and you can see how you can tell the difference between this fish being one fish and then having a second one right behind it. So that's how we're going to change the colors, even though they're all very similar to each other. We'll be adding new colors. to it. So now I have blue and black added. And then as I want to, I can just go back and change and put the black on my brush. But the reason I'm able to change now is because I do have a series of these that are behind the first row of fish. And that's what we're painting now, the fish that are behind those fish. Just remember, load your brush with water when you need to. And it's okay if all the fish do not have the same consistency of paint. Some of them can be thinner than others, and some of them can be thicker. That adds a lot of interest. So as you add the different amounts of paint with the water, and some with more water, some with less water, some with more black, some with more blue, you can see how they change. But either way, you've got this flow that runs right through the painting with that dark color. So that's what we're looking for in this section of the painting. Okay, so now that we've mapped out the direction that they're going, then we're ready to put a little bit more detail in each one of those fish that we've painted. If you now add a little bit of white to your color, remember we had black, we added a little blue to it. Now we're adding some white, and we're going to go in and just put a few little detail areas in a few places, and each time they can be a little bit different. On this fish, I'm adding the head section, having a little bit more of a lighter gray. In this section, I'm adding a fin that has a little bit more of the lighter gray. In this section, his belly is a little bit lighter. In this section, the fin coming off of each side is a little lighter. And then the others, you just figure out if there's something special that could be a little bit different. Here's a fin that I'll put in as a little bit lighter. I can lighten up this whole fish if I want to. I can lighten up this section. So as you look around, you just find places that you could change, whether you're putting the head on in a different value, or eyes, or scales, or the gill, or the fins. Any part of it you could change just a little bit. But this painting has enough interest that you're not going to have to do very much, and you still get the look of fish, the swim of fish, and so you're not going to need much else to happen in this part of the painting. So now we're going to move over in this particular picture, and we're going to go to blue. I'm going to have blue fish, but I'm going to make them lighter, so I'm going to add white to it. And then I'm also going to add a little black to make it on the gray side. I don't want the blue fish to be too bright. So I'm toning the blue down with a little white and with a little black. And then I'm using the fish that I see that are outlined in blue, and I'm going to paint those in. Remember, use the toe of your brush to go in. If you choke up with the brush and hold just the hold really close down to the where the bristles are. If you really hold close to that area, you can see you can choke up with the brush and have a lot of control with it. And as you paint these, you can tell you're just finding the outline of it first. Use the little tiny detail with a little pressure from you as you begin to paint. That little bit of pressure will allow you to paint really thin and fine and make a small area. And then if you get to a larger area, you just press down and have more pressure. And if you do that, then of course you can spread out and paint and have a fuller space filled in. Each time you go over, if you will pick up a little bit more blue or more white or more black, then the blues change as you paint with them. And that certainly adds interest. The repetition of the black and now the repetition of the blues will build the design principle that this painting needs to be very strong without much detail at all. So I've got a few blue fish, and you can begin to see how they're moving through the painting. Please feel free to change the outline or the drawing of the fish as you go. If you want to add a little bit more detail with the fins or the tails, you can certainly do that. But I think a simple design in this case is pretty important to the painting because you already have so many elements in it anyway. You don't need much else for the painting to be strong. Okay, so we have these blue fish that are floating in. So now if you just add like more blue to your brush, and you can go in and add things, brush strokes that show scales and eyes or a mouth. Just if you go in and add brush strokes of that color. So I added a little bit more blue. Now I can add a little more white in some places. And I'll do that almost like across the top, as if light were coming down over the fish from the top. And you can see how interesting that is. Now we will add more black and white to your brush, and that will make a gray. And this color with a little bit of the blue in it, so it'll be a bluish gray. We're going to start the fish that are gray. Once again, pay attention to your round brush and the shapes that you are making by choking up on the brush. The pressure that you're using with the brush to control the amount of detail that you're adding is important. As you paint, you can add more white and make some of the fish lighter and some of them darker. But as long as it has the undertone of being grayish, it'll be perfect. For the flow that we're creating with these fish swimming. So you can overdraw or you can overpaint as you need to, adding more fins on some fish or tails. Any way you want to change your design, you certainly can. You've got a lot of space to work in to do that with. But the fish are in movement. And that's what makes this painting so successful. It's so interesting to look at each one of the different fish. And basically it's a suggestion of a fish. That you're creating for the viewer to look at. If you get two fish that are really close, or one's on the top and one's underneath, just remember to change the value to go lighter or darker so that you can see the other one. Choke up on the brush when you need to so that you can get the detail you're looking for. And then I'm adding a little bit of blue to the light gray and changing it up one more time with a color that's different. So this is a bluish gray to do a few of these last fish with. So as many times as you can change that value, the more interest you're going to add. Remember, sometimes you have to dip in the water so your paint will flow. And then when all of your fish are filled in, I would add more white to your brush and go in and begin to identify a few changes so the fish aren't flat. You want to give them form, and to do that you change the value, sometimes lighter, sometimes darker. So I added white first so I can go in and put some of the faces lighter, some of the fans, tails lighter. Maybe just a scale or two with the light on it certainly brings out the depth in creating these fish floating together, but being in the front, in the middle, and on the back side. Okay, so the overlapping part is very important. We can put little tiny areas in behind some of the major fish and fill it up with some spaces that show there are fish behind other fish. And then all of your space is just about complete with that particular canvas. Okay, we will now add the goldfish on this one, and this is the star of the painting. So we'll add that in. You can make it a yellowish orangey color. I'll add yellow ochre with a little orange and white. And I can go more yellow or more orange as I want to. But let's get this underpainting and then see what we have. This orange looks really good with the blue because it's its complement, so that certainly makes the orange fish or the goldfish come right out and draw your attention. So I'm just using the toe of the brush to make the little tiny details in the corners. And then I'm pressing down a little bit more in the center to fill up the space. And then I have that first section completed. Now I'm going to leave it as I add the second or the middle section. So now I'm going to add the second section to the painting for us to begin. We're going to start it the same way. We're going to go through and find the black fish first. So I'm going to make sure my brush is dipped in water, and I'm going to move it over and load the brush with black paint. And I'm going to look for black fish. And right now I'm just finding the shape. You can see as you begin to identify them that they make a line that's going to run all the way through the canvas. That is certainly intentional. Remember, sometimes you need to dip in the water and roll in the paint so it flows. Remember, change your wrist and move your rotation so that you get a way for your brush to go where you want it to go. Remember, run off the page is an important art element, so use that as an advantage to make your painting more interesting. Dip in water, roll in the paint, use the toe of your brush to make the edge of your fish. Remember, you can paint your own outline as you go. We gave you a neat drawing, but it's only an outline for you to have as a reference. You can certainly change the fish any way you want as you're painting. The most important part is to have the flow of the different schools of fish in color. So you'll be able to do that without any problem. remember, if you get two fish that are close to each other and you want to show the difference between the two, if you will add the blue to the black, you can see that then they look very different. You'll know it's not the same fish. But remember, the fish do overlap each other, so it's okay if they're together. Okay, so that sets up the darker fish. So now let's change over and go to the blue. So I'm going to wash my brush. I'm going to add blue and white with a little bit of black because I don't want the fish to be too brassy looking. I'm going to find the fish that I think are most blue in color and start with those first. I added just a little bit more black to my brush on this second one, even though it's a blue fish, because it was so close to the first blue fish. That way I changed up the color. Remember, you can overpaint. On these particular fish, we can begin adding more white or more gray as you go, so that they add more interest just with their shading or with their colors being different. Okay, so now we have a nice grouping of blue. We can add more white to our brush, and then we can go in and make any kind of details that you want to point out. We can add fins or scales or just lights flowing in. And there we have it. So now let's go to gray. I'm going to wash out that just a little bit. And I'm going to go black and white and add a little bit of blue to it. And then I'm going to start on the gray fish. There are a lot of gray fish, so I would recommend that as you paint, you change the grays from light to medium to dark. Get in all the basic ones that you can see best first, that are in the front. And after you get the front fish in, then you can always go back and put the fish behind that you find. But with so many fish in one small area, if you feel like that you can't figure out what is what at first, don't worry about it. Just find one fish, paint it, and then you'll find another and another and another. And that will keep going until you find all the fish. But at first, it may seem just a little overwhelming because there's so many of them. But just one fish at a time, and you'll work through all the space. You can see the ones that are out in front. So you can begin by just filling those big shapes in. Just keep adding white to your brush to change it up a little bit. And don't forget to dip in water occasionally to make sure your paint flows. It dries out after a little bit, just sitting on your palette. So there are a lot of bluish gray. Now once you get a good many of those done, you can change over and do a gray that doesn't have so much blue in it. So I'm going to wash the blue out and just go to white and black. And then I can start doing a few of those. That'll show the difference between the fish, and you can easily tell that one fish is in front of another fish with the colors being different. The lighter and darker makes a big difference. It lets you overlap right on top of the other fish without any problems. Now remember, detail is not that big a deal, but if you like it and you want to spend a lot of time making every individual fish, you can certainly do that. You can add back in blues or grays when you want. And then just change back over to black and white. The more changes you make, I think the more you're going to like the painting. Keep going a little bit lighter so that the fish almost look transparent. That's fine. That's a good thing. They all don't have to be alike. You've already got a nice gray line in your from your drawing anyway. So because that's a marker line and it is a paint marker, you don't have to even cover it up. You can leave it as an important part of your painting. So you don't have to cover up every mark on your canvas either. Actually, the lines are quite nice in there. They change up the painting from just the flat, solid colors. Okay, So I like the feel of that. Okay. Now I'll add a little bit of more of a white to the brush so that I can come in, and if I want some of them to have a little highlight coming in and just really almost change the value enough so that they're not flat. That's the goal anyway. We don't want them to be flat, and if we just add another value, if we just even scuff the brush across to give it a little texture, that certainly adds some character to the fish and a lot of interest, which I like a lot. I'll also do that with the blue. I'll just scuff across the blues because they're a little flat. So just add a little. And once I get them all in here, then I can go back and play with the whole design at once. So I think I'll leave that one the way it is. So at this time I'll wash the brush and dry it, and then get the last section that goes to the painting so we can have it next. Okay, so to begin this one, I'm going to start with black. So I'm going to dip my brush in the water, and I'm going to load with my black paint. And then I'm going to start with the black fish. So I'm going to paint the black fish, remembering to use my round brush from different angles so I can get into the detail that I want. Remember, you can choke up on your brush when you need to, and then push down and have a lot of pressure when you need to fill up a big space. Dip in the water so that your paint flows. You really get a sense of the rhythm going by the time you get to the third one. Remember, when you get two that are really close together and you want to add blue to the black, you can certainly do that and change over and have a dark-ish blue color that's almost black. And then you're ready to move right into the blue color for the fish. Just put blue on and add a little bit of white in it. And then you're ready to continue on with that color. Remember, they are in movement, in motion, so the more squiggly you are with your brush and with your strokes, the better. Found a few more blue and black ones, so I just added a little bit more of the darker blue to my brush. Now I'll go back to the blue. So this is the blue with a little white in it, and it already had some gray in it anyway. So they're just moving right through the water. Adding more white. Remember, you have to load your brush, you have to dip it in the water. I'll add more white. Got a couple more bluish ones I'll do, and then I'll go more gray. Remember, the lines are good, so you can always keep those. Now I'll go more black and white. Doesn't have quite as much of the blue in it. And I'll put those in. So remember, when you get in this area and you have a lot of overlapping, all you need to do is change the value. So I'll add more white to this one. this one. So if they're side by side or overlapping, just change its value. Remember, you can't see all parts of all the fish because of the overlapping. So you have to leave some of them behind. Get a little bit more light blue in here. Maybe a little more blue in this area. Add more white. And remember, it's okay if your lines show. Okay, I'll go back now to a darker gray and finish up with a few of those. I think it's fun even to have lines that you can see of the fish, but you don't have a lot of color there. I think that's a fun way to do it. Now with your brush, you can certainly add fish that are a little bit more transparent into some of these places. So you can see the fish, but just a smidgen of it. You can see some of the lines, but not too much. But you can see which direction they're headed. And that's the most important thing. Just make sure when you put your 3 canvases together that you have a good connect between the 2 fish that join in the middle. Okay, then you can use your other values, your lighter colors, to come in and begin to add a little bit of texture. It's fun to do that when these are dry, and you can almost do a dry brush effect where you put a little bit of paint on your brush but no water, and you just scrub across the fish just to give it a little bit of the detail and texture, but without much paint and without any edges or lines. These are all just sort of form placements of color that are just moving about. So you can just scrub in some of those colors, and then that way you can make sure that you have everything tied together the way you want it to look. Now that you have finished your project, we want to see your masterpiece. Please send us a picture to our email at the Art Center of Wilmington Island at gmail.com, or post it to our Facebook page. Keep visiting our Facebook page and website to see the latest art at home kits available. Thanks so much for supporting your neighborhood art studio.